Hello, everybody. Welcome to the GKC Show. This is episode 4. We have a really special guest with us here today, Don Thibeau. But before we get started, I just want to let everybody know, please subscribe, smash the like button. Sorry,
Yeah, Matt.
subscribe. That's an important one. And
Nobody
also,
knows. It's Matt.
yeah, just smash it. And then also comment, ask questions. We really want the community to be involved. And that's the best way for us to do this at this point. So again, without further ado, let's dive right into the show. Sam, if you want to kind of kick stuff off.
Yeah, Don, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hopefully, the community will get a lot out of getting some face time with everyone. I guess so. Just a heads up, this is going to be hard hitting reporting. Like we're not throwing
Here for it.
just be ready. This is going to be some serious stuff. I guess my first question to kind of start off, and I think it'll be a good introduction. Like to get a little bit of insight into what was your impetus behind making the jump from the Hbar Foundation to NFT.com. We had a couple weeks ago, actually at NFT NYC, we had Cole from the Hbar Foundation on, and he was saying that you inspired him. And I mean, honestly, everybody has great things to say about you. They say, you're a really good judge of talent, which is a great thing to have on our team, and you're the guy who gets stuff done. I think Jordan talked about that at WAGMeet, that you have a point A to point B, give it to Don, and he'll figure out how you get there. So it's fantastic. We're really glad to have you on board. I know a lot of us are big Hedera people as well. So kind of again, what was your impetus to do that? If Jordan has some pictures of you doing something, okay, you can just
Thankfully not. Those would be some good NFTs. Well, yeah, sure. And firstly, thanks so much for having me. I think community forums like this, especially started by guys like yourselves, I think are just incredibly fun to be a part of and valuable for the whole community. So always happy to participate here however I can. Yeah, so as Sam, you mentioned, I previously, over the last year or so, had started, along with my co-founder Shane, the Hbar Foundation, really centered on building and supporting the ecosystem around Hedera Hashgraph financially from a technical perspective and from a marketing perspective. But for me, my passion has always been in product building. That's what I want to build my career around. That's the skill set I feel I'm best at. So really, I always knew that I'd be returning to more of a product role at some point in the future. Now, for me, I always make career decisions based on what problems I think would be most enjoyable to try and solve. And when I look at the NFT space and what we're doing at NFT.com, that question of how to enable creators to more directly engage with their fan bases, to give them a direct connection to one another and vice versa, while preserving those core tenets of Web3, individual identity, ownership of assets, the ability for us to control our social presence, that problem was just one that I couldn't really pass up trying to solve. The NFT space has seen an incredible influx of brands, gaming companies, sports teams, artists, musicians who are looking at this new asset class as how to foster that type of engagement. And I cannot wait to continue to build the NFT.com platform as the place for helping to bring those two sides of the marketplace together and to help solve that problem of how to better enable creators to reach their audiences and give audiences an actual ability to be participants of a community rather than just consumers of a product or service.
It's awesome. And the one thing you left out, you said you were going to tell us the exact date when Hedera NFTs are going to be live on it.
Well, look, all I'll say is that I think the, Cambrian explosion, so to speak, of NFTs on Hedera over the last 6 months has been unbelievable. You've seen awesome wallet projects like Hashpack and Blade, marketplaces like Zeus really coming to market and showcasing the creators in that ecosystem. And so from an NFT perspective, I think certainly it's going to continue to rise in relevance and be one that's critical for success of broader NFTs in the industry.
I almost had it. I almost close, but he slipped right away.
Yeah.
So Don, community is obviously Jordan has spoke a lot about minimum viable community and how important that is to the structure. What could we inform for you to help make product decisions about NFT.com. What kind of feedback would you like from the community?
Yeah. So first I'll talk about what's already been happening, and then I'll talk
Mhm.
about what we can look for in the future. So for those of you that are Genesis key holders, you guys know that we have our closed beta that started, I think, now about a month ago,
Yep.
and has been essentially new product releases every 2 weeks to our Genesis key holders as that early community. We're doing this for a few reasons. One, because it's just good development practice to ship things more frequently and in smaller chunks, so you can actually make big features delivered over time. Second, it helps us from a testing perspective. But third, it also helps to engage the community around feedback of what we're building and what could be most important next. So, what's happening today in Discord is that users are testing the new features that come out in a given beta and giving us feedback. Maybe they have a bug here, or some edit button there isn't really as clear as it should be. And that feedback is critical in everything we do, from a design perspective, from an engineering perspective, from a testing perspective, and helps us to harden the platform as we get it ready for broad public launch. Now, I think going forward, that's also going to be involving the community and helping to call out and design future product features. So this could be proposals from our team or from the community, which say, hey, we'd like to see this NFT for Hedera integration sooner rather than later, or even under this scope. And those types of proposals being submitted by the community, discussed and vetted by the community, are going to be instrumental in forming a product roadmap and deciding where priorities lie. I'll tie it back, to what I said at the start. We're not really the believers of platforms that just impart new features and new changes on its user base. We actually believe the user base should be the one driving that direction for the product. And for us, that's a core tenet of Web3 and how these types of platforms should be built going forward.
So we'll see something like a GKC improvement proposal, kind of like a hip type of thing at some point.
Yeah, who knows what it'll be called or what the rules of it might be, but I think those types of initiatives are incredibly valuable for distributed platforms. And, they've worked well for a lot of protocols like Hedera, like Ethereum, like even Bitcoin. And that, I think, is something that we'll definitely want to leverage as we continue to grow our platform and our community.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched a little bit on kind of obliquely on my next question, and it's I'm thoroughly fascinated by DAOs in general, and I'm super excited to be a part of ours as it kind of grows up and becomes what it can be. And the whole idea of crawl before you walk, before you run, and not just launch into it and everybody voting, just a free for all is absolutely the right way to go. And I think taking it slow is prudent. But how do you see, as a part of the team? I know you're more focused on the product, but how do you see the DAO evolving? How do you see it kind of starting to take control and eventually becoming the driving force behind not just the product features, but also the direction of the company in general?
Mm. So I think first and foremost, we'll see some parts of it that are naturally self-forming. The GKC as that first user group really saying, this is the area that we're most interested in. This is what we want to be driving as a community. And I think that self-forming nature is going to be absolutely critical to helping determine what this DAO looks like in the future. Now, speaking of DAOs in general, in the industry, I think it's fascinating to see that DAOs are kind of starting to be at an inflection point where they're starting to mean and do very different things depending on different protocols. So if we look at one extreme, you have DAOs that govern, layer one protocols, and they just define anything that's part of that protocol deployed to a node, used to function for a cryptocurrency as governed by the DAO. That protocol is the product of the DAO. We have others that are pure social. So you look at, for instance, what like Link's DAO is doing in the golf space around wanting to buy a golf course, but they're primarily focused on having it be a social community first and foremost, and less kind of on the product side. And then there's kind of this middle ground where DAOs are really only responsible for a portion of a given product stack, and where the lines actually get drawn on what is the protocol versus what is the front end application versus what is the data and analytics layer are all starting to be asked around DAO governance and where those lines are drawn. And I think we're going to have to, figure out a similar type of set of answers, because the question of just it's a protocol, the protocol is governed, that's it, isn't really something that's fit for most products. A good corollary is Uniswap, right? Uniswap has a protocol and then it also has a front end application. Which one's governed by their DAO, depending on who you ask, can mean different things. And certainly from a Uniswap Labs perspective has different implications as well. So that's definitely one of the dynamics that we're going to have to be working through to it and exploring what the optimal solution is from a community perspective and as a community to help, make this whole thing succeed and deliver on that promise of bringing creators to their fans.
Yeah, that kind of touches on a few things that we've talked about in the past. Is there's this the buzzword of Web3, and I think most people who are in the industry understand that Web3 is kind of a myth. It's more like Web 2.5, Web 2.75.
Mm-hmm.
There's a there's a, like you were talking about, where the line is drawn, and
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a moving line at some point. And kind of the same thing with the DAO. Pure decentralized autonomous organization isn't really feasible. Somebody has to pay the bills. Somebody has to make sure that people have health insurance, or somebody has to hire the lawyers, which a DAO will probably never vote to hire lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, there has to be a little bit of centralization, but where that line gets drawn and how that dynamic works is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool to be a part of a project kind of at the beginning of that, and that's why another thing we've talked about a lot is collaboration with other
Yeah.
projects. I mean, so many people. I got the. I'm not sure how much time you spent, just walking around NFT NYC, but it's such a collaborative feeling from 99% of the people. Everybody understands that it's a massive user base that we haven't even tapped yet. There's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of users out there. There's plenty of projects to work on. There's plenty to do. And if we work together, we can grow this ecosystem a lot faster and a lot more efficiently in the short term. I mean, down the road, sure, it'll probably get cutthroat, and but for now, it's a really cool spot to be in, because the vast majority of people are saying, okay, let's do this together. You have a project, I have a project. You're Solana, I'm Hedera. That's cool. Let's hype
Mm-hmm.
each other's stuff.
Well, and
So it's important to get some feedbacks from some of these DAOs that exist already. I've actually joined BitDAO. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
And I've been following on their server. They have a massive DAO. Actually, I was just on a call last night. Their DAO, they have presentations for investment possibilities, and their DAO votes on it. So they're definitely much further along than us.
Mm-hmm.
And some other DAOs that are out there, like, reach out to them. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's find out what are some of the lessons that they learned early on. And then as we grow, let's talk to other burgeoning DAOs and say, these are some of the lessons we learned.
Yeah.
And the more we kind of inform each other, I think the better off we'll all be.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the value propositions we can easily take to those DAOs and to creators in the space already is that, NFT profiles on NFT.com are assets in and of themselves, but really are there to be kind of megaphones. Is that a word?
megaphone.
Megaphones. There we go. Magnifying glass, megaphones, whatever. There we go. Megaphones for creators and what they're creating, collectors and what they're showcasing. And so our short-term goal is really to just start to make them aware that they can have that profile that is cross-cutting across Web3 to showcase their work, to showcase their collections. And for us, I think that'll be an early signal for starting to make those connections, to your point, Sam, with other DAOs, with other creators, other collectors. So it's certainly an interesting dynamic. I guess just one other, comment I'd share on the DAO space, which is another tension between DAOs being viewed as, purely communal versus purely free market entities, right? And you see some DAOs that are really seeking to have an outcome of a single decision, a single product or alignment, and others that are really facilitating competition between different entities, for profit entities who want to contribute, feature X versus feature Y. I'm more inclined towards that latter, where they can actually have entities which have those for profit motives and are vested in the success of the DAO, That's what we saw with some open source communities like the Linux Foundation as helping to drive their success. But still, I think maintaining that community governance and the communal nature that that provides, I think, is also going to be critically important.
Oh, sorry, I had to pop my microphone off because there's somebody running water upstairs. So you had talked a little bit before about, or Sam, you had brought up the division between different platforms like Solana and Tezos and things like that. Don, at what point do you see that not mattering anymore? When do you think we'll have cross-platform issuance of NFTs where it's easy to move things around and it doesn't really matter what platform you're on? And how will that change the game?
So I think two contradictory statements are true. One is that I think it will always matter which platform you start to build on. But two, that these platforms, specifically layer 1 networks, will always and should be interconnected. So I have an overly simplistic view of the cryptocurrency space, which is that all of these projects, be they layer 1s, DeFi, NFTs, are racing to attain network effects. Whether it's nodes on a network, whether it's social network effects from a user perspective, or economic network effects from a token perspective, they're seeking to create that flywheel of activity that brings on more users, adding more value to the network, therefore attracting more users and growing and growing. And in the layer 1 space in particular, I think they're seeking to attain these network effects by building towards targeted use cases. So in the future, I think you could see networks like Hedera, for instance, that could be optimized for NFT and collectible issuance for both big brands and individual creators. You could see networks like Ethereum really be optimized for DeFi and decentralized exchange of tokens and things like that. You could see other networks which might be optimized for mobile payments, for instance, like Solana. So I think there's going to be a natural consolidation around key use cases driven by who's winning the network effects. But those disparate networks will still and must still be interconnected to one another so that your payments network might be able to interact with your NFT exchange network, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, I think another thing we've talked about is whoever is the first to figure out that cross-chain communication issue and make it secure and make it immutable is, I mean, that's gonna just blow the top off of this thing because off of the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because when we can get to that point and everyone's comfortable with it, I mean, that's the security issue is everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when someone makes it secure, and somebody's going to do it because there's so much value, that's gonna be an absolute game changer.
Yeah. I mean, you see stalwarts like, Wormhole and the Jump team around what they're doing for token liquidity. There's also challengers coming up, whether that's an Axelar focused on things like cross-chain messaging and token transfers, or Nomad that's trying to do that in a, validatorless model. I think it's a absolutely fascinating side of the space and one that's ripe for opportunity and parallel, if anything else is true as well in the bridging space.
And it's great that NFT.com. It's not Hedera NFT.com. It's not Ethereum NFT.com. It's NFT.com. So we're positioned to be kind of the central location for all things NFT, regardless of platform.
Yeah. And, I share that vision. I want us to be a platform that can interact across marketplaces, across networks, across these different components. I'm not naive enough, nor do I want to build the monolith, right? That is the platform to end all platforms. But I think by preserving some of those core tenets of Web3, owning your profile, owning your identity, owning your assets, and delivering an experience that helps you take those to these different places, I think we can, certainly build something quite exciting here.
Cool. So, Donna, are there any projects in the NFT space that you're really excited about?
Gosh, yes. Short answer.
A loaded question, I guess. Other than hodl these nuts.
Yeah. Obviously number one on your list, right, Don?
Yeah. this will reveal how my mind works, right? It kind of goes up the stack. One, I think there's a lot of interesting layer one work around NFT optimization, certainly with Hedera. Other chains like Wax are I think taking an interesting approach. Then there's the data and analytics layer. It seems like every other week somebody's raised another 10 to 25 million dollars to have NFT optimized data. Then of course there's the exchange capabilities, the wallet providers, the issuance, and then for me, where the real excitement is the creator side around
Yeah.
games that are issuing in-game assets as NFTs, sports teams who are looking for NFT collectibles and ticketing. So it's almost too much excitement to distill down to a few, but I think it's at each layer. There's really fascinating work going on.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the game space. We had Scion with
Mm,
Hidarian Dragons earlier this week and last week in our two-part session, and I think gaming is ripe for explosion. I play I'm primarily in the Hedera space, but I do play a game called Gods on Chain by Immutable X.
yeah.
And it really just I grew up playing Magic the Gathering, so I
Mm,
was
mhm,
used to this idea of card ownership and sitting down and
yeah.
playing a game with someone like that, and to have ownership of the cards that you're playing with really does change the dynamic of the game. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that to take place within other segments of the gaming space.
Yeah. I think my view there, because I share that excitement, is, really pay attention to where projects issuing gaming related NFTs are focused on gamer experience.
Mhm.
Because we've seen a number of projects that have had to try and kind of just slap on an NFT to an existing game. And the gaming community, their core user base, really backlashed against it because they think they might just be exploited. And from their
Right.
perspective, that's a fair concern. You look at how games have monetized recently is driven by, microtransactions, is driven by user attention. And many of them will want to just have another thing they have to pay for. But those games that, like you said, have an asset ownership tied to a card, or weave that in a seamless way, I think are going to be where there's a lot of gaming growth because they can support their community and support the gamers that, make them successful.
Cool. No, Don, are you much of a gamer yourself, like a traditional console or PC gamer?
I used to be more. Certain job requirements of late have limited aforementioned free time, but it's always something that when I get a chance to, I will. We've always got our Nintendo Switch nearby, so we're
Nice.
at least getting some gaming in, but not as much as I used to.
Yeah, there's that classic example of Fortnite. I know
Mm,
I listen to Gary Vee quite a bit, and he always
mm,
uses that Fortnite example of eventually someone is going to NFTize these skins and in-game items and things like that, and they're going to make a boatload of money if it's
mm.
someone who has the kind of traction what's the company? Epic, is that the
Yeah,
company that,
hmm,
if someone like
that's
that
right.
gets behind it?
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I do think it's inevitable for sure. But as we've seen in the crypto space, innovation can be a bumpy
Yeah.
road, and I think that might be true for gaming as well, but certainly an inevitable area of opportunity.
well, it's the tokenization of everything, really, not just the
Mm,
game. I mean, it's the tokenization of everything. That's where it's going. That's why we're in this space.
mm,
I think that kind of leads to my next question is kind of uh, I think in addition to cross-chain communication, the next thing that's going to really blow the top off of the Web3 space is ease of use
mm,
for average
Mm.
people. So, right now, you think about like my mother is not going to get a Ledger Nano X. She's not going to write down 20 words and keep them somewhere and then figure out how to like. It's just for us, we're used to it. We do it all the time. It's
mm,
fine. But to really introduce Web3 and NFTs to the broader community, someone has to crack the code for ease of use. And so I guess my kind of bringing it back to NFT.com, kind of what are the plans for that going forward
mm.
to foster that for the community and for our users? And how do you see that playing out over the next 6 months, year, 5 years, etc.?
Yeah. So, short term, what I've really had the team focus on, as I'm sure you've seen through the beta, that might seem kind of non-intuitive and slow, but I think is an opportunity over time, is optimizing that profile experience. I want to make it as easy to create your NFT profile as it is to create your Instagram account. But in doing that, we're not foregoing everything that makes Web3 great. I keep coming back to owning your identity, owning your assets, but actually makes those accessible to a much broader user base. If we take that profile as the core on ramp to the NFT platform, but also to Web3 as a whole, then I think the opportunity in front of us around how we want that profile to engage with other NFT collections, buying, trading, the utility side of things, I think we'll see an incredible, amount of opportunity there. So, that's really where we're focused, is how to make that on ramp accessible while protecting the tenants that make Web3 so powerful. And from there, adding on the features to the platform that can make it easy to not only display, but issue, trade, exchange, and even use NFTs in Web3 and across different applications.
So,
Okay.
Don, are there any specific features and tools that you're excited about for, and it can be something in the distant future that's not going to be on the, the immediate roadmap, but are there features
Mm.
within NFTcom that you're, specifically excited about getting to?
One I'll harp on just for a moment because I'm an econ and finance nerd at heart. It's
Okay.
this idea of making the profile an asset in and of itself, something that an individual can own, trade, and exchange of their own accord, but also build a reputation with over time. And I think from a purely economics perspective, I think that's just an interesting innovation of how identity and credentials can become valuable in and of themselves. So seeing what we'll add to NFT profiles that can make them more customizable, more accessible, more interactable. I'm just on fire making up words today. I think certainly what's most exciting to me, but that's just a small piece of what's going to be built over
Cool.
time.
Yeah, going back just really quickly to the ease of use. I mean, I think it's we're all Web3 nerds, and we're immersed in it. So we would never turn control of our assets over to someone else. We don't even.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even keep anything on an exchange anymore. It's unless it's just specifically for a trading purpose, and then get it off as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the idea of like custodial wallets and things like that it's coming. I mean, people are working on it just because the broader community is willing to give up a little bit of that security, or maybe doesn't understand what they're giving up, in so that they can sign up with an email address and a password, or so that they can get a confirmation text message, and that's all they need to do to log in. So is despite wanting to stay as true to Web3 as we can, does NFT.com have plans to kind of make that ease of use for people who are interested in it as well for this platform in the future?
Short answer is yes, absolutely. To achieve our mission of bringing billions of people to millions of creators, there needs to be that accessible on ramp, but one that can support that type of optionality for people who want, their ledger device connected up to their wallet. So, for me, I think that's an absolutely critical piece for our success.
So, and Don, does custodial necessarily exclude Web3, right? In other words, traditionally a custodial wallet is owned by a centralized organization, but is there some kind of opportunity in the future for a custodial wallet to be a distributed type of application in and of itself, so that you're storing your stuff in a
Mhm.
traditional password way, but no central organization has control over it?
It really depends on what you're optimizing for. You can have pure on-chain custodial functions through a smart contract with multi-sig wallets. You can have it, through a third-party intermediary. There's kind of a whole set of options. So for me, I worry less about, this is the one way it should be done for security of assets versus another way, and more about embracing, again, that core tenet of Web3 around composability. Your choice of your security should be something that can integrate to an application without you needing to compromise that choice. You should have the ability to determine, maybe you're comfortable with a banking relationship, maybe you're comfortable with an exchange, maybe you're comfortable with a ledger, maybe you're comfortable with MetaMask. That choice should be on the user, of them having an ability to kind of construct their assets, store their assets at their choice. We want to make it accessible, but ultimately it's that core concept of composability that I think is very important.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's like everything in Web3 where we are right now, whether you're talking about DAOs, whether you're talking about custodial wallets or cross-chain interaction, we're all figuring it out. And I had conversations with people at the conference, and my thought is anybody who says they're truly a subject matter expert is full of it, because none of us are. It's
Yeah.
just it's evolving too fast. Even if you just try to focus on your little tiny piece of the pie, it's just learn something new every single day.
Well,
Yeah.
And
that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. What NFTcom is doing is that slow, methodical rollout helps to solve a lot of those problems.
I think we're getting pretty fast. Releases every 2 weeks. I'm
Yeah.
hoping we up that cadence, but
Well, and
certainly
I don't mean to, when
methodical and
right,
intentional. I'll take
methodical
that.
and intentional, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
giving yourself a small enough chunk to reiterate on, as opposed, because if you roll out a big change in NFT.com, it makes it much more difficult to reiterate and make updates and changes to that update, right?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those core tenets around product development that can make it more accessible, is test and ship smaller features over time.
that's a paradigm shift in Web3, because
Hmm.
the space has been, for so long, it's been ready, fire, aim. Get it out there. We'll fix it once it's out there. Just put it out, get people trading our tokens, make some money, and then either we'll fix it down the road or we won't. We'll just take our
Hmm.
payday.
Yeah.
So I think that's we're in the equivalent of the early 2000s for the internet. We're past the
Mm.
dot-com boom. We're past the crazy. It's crypto, so it's still going to be crazy, especially with the market the way it is now. But we're in the phase where the thoughtful companies that have a roadmap, that have a plan, that have a little bit of patience and some big brains behind it, are the
Hmm.
ones going to succeed. And this is the time. The early 2000s is when Google and Facebook and when Amazon became Amazon. That's when these companies really dug in and decided that this is what they're going to do. So
Yeah.
I think we're in a
Very
great spot.
excited.
Yeah, and Don, I know you have to head out, but just want to thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We're gonna hit some other members of the team, and
Yeah.
I hope to have you back on some other time when we're hopefully further along.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to make this a recurring meeting, but really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you guys for the
Awesome.
questions, and appreciate everyone listening for all the continued support, and looking forward to talking again soon.
I
Well,
love it.
we're
Thanks so much.
excited. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Don. We appreciate your time and everything that you're doing for the community. Again,
Awesome.
everybody, like, subscribe, smash the buttons, do all that wonderful stuff, and let us know how we're doing. And yeah, we'll see you the next time, next week.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.